And then also I have to do which is a commissioned work, and I have to go into the city to go and shoot. So we were on the street Monday, and that's so challenging, especially with this COVID.
Yeah.
Walking, on the streets of Jos, having to wear mask and face shield. I almost died, because I was just like, I wasn't getting enough oxygen.
Yes.
And it was humid. It was just chaotic. But we actually did it. I'm so happy that happened as well. So you can see that I got a little tan from that.
Yes. You look very bronzed.
Yeah, I got a little tan from actually after being indoors for so long. So it was actually nice. So I just finished, with all the material and submitting over the weekend. So I got a thumbs up this morning. So I'm kind of done with that as well. So yeah, so it's been a little bit chaotic. It's good stuff, I would say. I'm not complaining, because a lot of people are dying to get things going during this period. So you have things still happening and still getting commissions, and things like that. So I'm very grateful for that, So I'm not going to take it for granted.
Exactly. That's fantastic. That it's so rewarding when you do something and you finish it,
Yes.
When it's been challenging and it's finished and it's been sent, there's just this, done.
Yes. Yes.
What was that project
and then I got
for? On.
Okay, so basically, it's a story, which first of all, the person that was in charge, I couldn't believe when I got the email from her. So she was one of the people that actually got me interested in VR. Her name is Noni de la Pena. She's like one of the top, sort of like using VR for journalism advocate. And she's been doing a lot of work. She's even won an Emmy, I think.
Wow.
One of her productions, so she's such a big deal. So a friend of mine who's also into VR, production and stuff, actually did the introduction, And so when I got the email, I was like, Noni de la Penny. I remember when I was going into Electric South, I wrote, my proposal, listed on our work, because I was quite fascinated by it. So to actually have me working for her was very like, oh my goodness. So the story is actually about someone who had come to Nigeria for a few years, and she was based in Kaduna, and she had actually, so they're trying to compare the educational system and how, the foundation, that people get from actually starting their education in Nigeria is quite rewarding, when you look at it on the long term, and how it actually prepares them, for other educational systems across the world, So it was kind of like around that narrative. So the ideal thing would have been for us to shoot in Kaduna, but then obviously with all the things going on, it wasn't impossible at this time. So we just had to kind of create scenarios in Lagos, just try to get, shots of Lagos, and try to get that in. So it was a bit different. And then also because the story happened a while back, decades ago. So obviously shooting, trying not to get people wearing masks in, because it's so for this period and all of that. So that was also like, going on as well, So it was just, it was a bit challenging, but at the same time we got what we were looking for. So when I got the mail yesterday, they said, oh, the client happy. I was like, yay, that's the most important thing. And she was also very grateful as well, because it would have meant them having to travel down to do it, and it was just, it was just nice that they got somebody to do it locally. So nice, yeah.
That's fantastic. Well done for that.
Thank you.
Rewarding. So I don't want to take too much of your time. Last time we spoke, I told you that I was doing this write-up text on marketing the arts, and the agenda basically was left quite open to us authors, especially those of us writing about the continent, the African perspective, because this perspective that we're about to tell, these narratives that we're about to include in the academic literature is very limited, so they're like, whatever perspectives you want to bring in on what's happening with regards to the visual arts and all that, kind of energy, do feel free to. So what I wanted to do, so I spent the last few weeks since talking to you, trying to think about what I wanted to do with the piece, what I wanted to do with the write-up, who I wanted to feature, And it was very important to me to, you know, feature people that had done something that was particularly unique and revolutionary within the that they're operating. And it didn't matter whether it was something that was a project at a time that started and finished or ended, or something that is ongoing. So it's sort of like a continuous narrative that flows, and something that we want to build on. So continue to follow you in your efforts with the next project and the next project, and continually record it within the literature. So what I'm working with are three visual artists, creatives, if you want, creatives within the visual arts. And I'm looking at the three of you across different angles. Okay, I'm looking at people that have created a platform that has been a catalyst or an incubator, you know, kind of format. And then I'm looking at people that have existing platforms that are touching on different aspects of widening access to the arts, engaging the community, and really looking through what they're doing as evidence to show how these activities actually engage and are developing. And I'm looking at someone else who is visual artist that is now able to create what we can call a cultural institution. Okay, so really scaling up this, what we call platform and agency, to build it into institution. So if you yourself, of course, Jumoke Sanwo, Precious, and then and then Papa Omotayo with what he's doing with and the third is Ibrahim Mahama with what he's doing with Red Clay and the SCCA in Tamale in Ghana. So the three of you, I'm featuring your work as narratives. And the main theme is called Narratives on Space and Place.
Okay.
Narratives on Space and Place. So it's a story of what's happening in the visual arts, what you three are to achieve, yourselves as visual artists, and the energy that you've put into platforms or agencies that you've created. Okay, so there's a little bit that I have access to. So things like the Revolving Art Incubator, for example, we already talked about that last time. I can go on the Instagram platform itself and almost create the narrative of what you've achieved there. Like I said, it would be nice to have some pictures to look at it, what it looked like as dead space.
I need to remember to send you that.
Yes, please, don't worry, I'll remind you. So your case with the narrative on
I'm trying to see, sorry Olalope, because sorry, 1 second. The line is really breaking, so I'm thinking maybe I should stop my video. I think it's a function of my connection.
Okay.
So I'll just stop my video so that, you know, because it's showing that my network bandwidth is low, you know, it's a bit challenging here, but I don't.
All right. So you
I'll
think,
just stop the video.
Yeah, if you go off video, you think it will be better on the bandwidth, yeah?
Yes, I think it would be. So I'll be able to hear you properly.
Yeah. Okay. So I would send you a reminder, because with your feature on what you did with the Revolving Art Incubator, what I'm going to be talking about is reviving dead spaces. So the concept of what you did there was breathing creative energy into dead space. So it's just
exactly.
It's a staircase, you know, it really has no creative energy other than for movement. And of course, what we do with that, in terms of what you did with that and the creatives that took part. So it sort of builds into it becoming an incubator. Like I say, there's information already that you've already given me about that, which I can incorporate into in the write-up, as well as your talk on the culture diaries. You know, you did say a lot about your vision about that there. So I don't want to be too repetitive in terms of your time with that, but it would be nice to see the evolution of the space, how it went from, you know, dead space to live space. And one of the best ways that we can feature that in that part of your narrative is in that pictorial form. So looking at it as dead space, and then looking at it as it starts to evolve into live space, live creative space. So that's a really interesting narrative that we're trying to document this section. So with that, I wanted to talk about something to do with measurability of impact. So being able to measure impact. And I was wondering if you had contact with, or were able as RAI, able to sort of follow any of the creatives that were incubated within that energy, where sort of like a narrative of what they displayed, what they exhibited at the early stage, and sort of where they are now. If we have any kind of reality that we can use well associated with that narrative, because we really want to show that in breathing life into that space and turning it into an incubator, it then became a catalyst for growth and development for all of the creatives, or some of the creatives that passed through it. Are you still there?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So
okay,
if we
so
can,
I think I'm listening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, yes. So absolutely, I think I mean that is possible. First of all, in terms of a pictorial story, we have images that we took at the start. You know, when we took over the space, and then also we can showcase, you know, a series of exhibitions and talks and things that we've had over the course of the years, and we have all of that documented. So I can share that with you. Also, in terms of looking at his progression as well, one of the things that we did was we always sort of, I mean, brought the artist back in a way. So for example, the first artist that we showcased at RAI was David Akinola. And we sort of did this collaborative exhibition, which was between him, Chima Wenzo, and Blessing E. And we continued a relationship onwards with David Akinola. We're going to be part of Art Joburg this year, and we're presenting David Akinola as a solo artist. We're doing a solo presentation for him at this year's Art Joburg. So it also shows the progression.
What's he called? Art
Akinola.
No, and I mean the festival. Is it a festival? Art what?
Yeah, it's Art Joburg. Art Joburg. It's Art Joburg.
How do you spell Jo?
Yeah. Art Joburg. That's Johannesburg.
Oh, Art Johannesburg. Okay.
Yeah, Art Joburg. Yes, it's like one of the leading fairs. Actually, it's an art fair in Africa. Yeah. So we're showcasing him. So it shows also the progression as well, that over the years, you know, we've sort of like tried to be part of his journey as well.
Excellent.
As an artist, and he's also been part of us in some way as well. It was the artist that designed our logo when we started. You know, so the initial at REI, he actually designed it, and he also did, you know, our profiles, you know, and things like that. You know, so I could also share that story. So it was also kind of part of our own story at REI as well. He sort of did a lot of our branding, so to speak, for us at REI. So we kind of have a relationship with him. So we can also measure that through his work as well. And I think that ties in expression. But also, there's also another artist as well, Babatunde Ogunlade, who we showcased him as a solo. He had a solo with us in 2017. And then in 2019, we brought him back as part of the Extroversion Project. And just sort of to show his progression as well, you know, as an artist, but also to see more in a collaborative sort of like outlook, how does this work fit in like some sort of like the project formats that we use for extroversion as well. There's also Kehinde Awofeso as well, who, we did, she was part of a group exhibition that we did also, I think that was in 2016, I think, with Adejoke Tubuyile, Bumi Ayelge, Stacey Ravero, and Kehinde Awofeso. It was called For Women. So we showcased her during that group exhibition, and then she was also part of Extroversion also towards the end of last year as well. So we tend to always sort of bring the artists back. The idea that we actually had for Extroversion was we wanted to bring a lot of the artists that we had worked with in the course of the year, to bring them back as part of it. But some of them actually pulled out based on different reasons. A lot of them felt they were more comfortable doing solos than doing sort of collaborative projects. They wanted, a bit more of the space to themselves as opposed to sharing the space. That's also something we're also realizing as well, that artists oftentimes don't like to collaborate. So you oftentimes have to kind of, negotiate with them and try to get them to see the benefits of collaboration, and things like that. So we find a couple of them pulled out, or they weren't ready, to showcase, But nonetheless, we always kind of leave them to continue to grow. And obviously, when we sort of intersect, then we come back again, to pick up from where we left off.
Yeah.
So I think using those people, I think it will be very easy to actually sort of go over that impact, and how we've kind of connected and how that really has expanded. But it's also very interesting, because our format also engages. I think personally as an artist, my format engages time and space. So it's very interesting that you're also, that's also how you're also placing this, because I've tried to time in the context of looking sort of like my post-colonial realities, looking at sort of like that colonial and post-colonial reality. So
sorry to interrupt you, Jumoke. The post-colonial reality, was this something that featured in Lagos at large, or is this?
Absolutely. So it was actually built around, that concept of engaging post-colonial societies, and how, some of the stark realities of those societies, in a way, whether, it depends on what angle you want to look at it, whether it aids development or whether at a level, it also retards development as well. So in a way, what I did with Lagos at Large was I asked a lot of questions and queries, and allowing people to actually make their presumptions or assumptions from the piece. So we engage time and we engage space also through Lagos at Large. As you see, if you watch the piece, it starts from 5:56, but also it's also kind of like this concept of how the day starts, this sort of every day comes with a new meaning, rebirth, and all of that. And people often go into the day with new ideas, new intentions, new, I would say, expectations, and things like that. And that's actually what drives people to Lagos, because everybody wakes up in Lagos and thinks at the end of the day, so they're going to hit it big. And that sort of drives the city in that sense. So people go into the city, and all of this many sort of ideas actually is what drives the city. So it starts from there. But then also, we also kind of engage, the architecture as well, looking at how the city is divided, and that divide is actually a function of sort of like colonial past as well. The fact that, that divide was actually instituted, by the colonials, when parents, when they came through, where they divided the city into the island and the mainland. And we've kind of kept that, even though we've assumed independence, since 1960, we've reinforced that. And that reinforcement now is now along the lines of class, because if you're living on the island, it sort of denotes, some sort of like classism, and when you're on the mainland, it's sort of, so it also inspires the movement that you see every morning, where people are heading towards the island because they want to also kind of, there's also that urge to break that sort of like social hierarchy, that
social mobility, to move up.
So people often wake up in the morning and they, eager because they want to live in Lekki and they want to move to the island. And so that sort of drives them as well. And I try to sort of expand, I try to create that sort of experience where the divide is clearly sort of stated in terms of the kind of sort of experience you even have in the city. You know, for example, on the island, you see you're surrounded by so much vastness, you know, the beauty of the ocean, you know, space. But then on the mainland, it's like there's density, and people are often struggling for space, and they're navigating the space. And I try to kind of show, you know, the dynamic in the city as well. And you know, just driven by the commerce, you know, like on the mainland, the commerce is not as, you know, the buying and selling. The buying and selling is done in a more, more high-end buying and selling. You know, you're selling, you're trading different things, you know, whether it's contracts, but, you know, whether it's, you know, the people are trading different things, but buying and selling is still ongoing as well. And we just wanted to reflect as well. But we're talking about deals, you know, people trade deals, more dealing and stuff going on the island. And we also reflect on the fact that even now, we have another infiltration coming through to the Chinese, and we try to reflect on that as well. There's a lot of dealings going on presently, you know, with the Far Easterners, you know, how is that reflected, you know, on our infrastructure and the outlook and the commerce and all the things going on in the city. So it was just for me a way to reflect on all of this many different realities, but also this idea that you know, there's a lot of gentrification going on. You know, there's a need. You know, the city is urbanizing, but there's a drive towards west, towards modernizing. And I think for me, that's like a bit of a challenge. So the westernized model, like, let's push everybody onto the periphery. You know, let's create like sort of like this middle class, sort of like, you know, architecture and things like that.
Yeah.
Person can't afford. And then we push every other person, we keep pushing them. I mean, people have actually been pushed in the state now because, you know, they can't afford to live in Lagos, you know, so they've had all this low-cost housing estates, you know, sending all the way into, spilling over into Ogun State. And then you have all of this, you know, you have all this new developments going on, you know, on the mainland, and most of them are actually quite empty because nobody can really afford to live in them, you know. So there's that irony as well. So we're creating sort of like this very interesting gentrified spaces that nobody's living there. So they're really empty, and majority of the people are being pushed, you know, out of the city. So that there's also that element of that as well. And those are some of the things that I just try to unpack, you know, within, you know, 10 minutes.
Fantastic. You know, and there's some things that are maybe some people may call subtle, or maybe missed by people that are not really in tune and looking to unpack what it is that you have squeezed in. Things like the like religion is featured within that. Ask you about the context, because it's the call to prayer.
Exactly. So again, you know, I wanted to play on that because, you know, I remember when I was, I think about 2004, you know, I had this job, you know, that I was doing then. I was working for the Protea Group, and, you know, and it was in BI, and I had to always wake up very early, traffic. So for me, the call to prayer was always symbolic for me, as it was safe for me to leave the house. You know, so once I heard the call to prayer, I would jump out of the house and I would leave. But I also realized that, in a way, it also, it's kind of like the unofficial alarm system in Lagos that everybody kind of works with. So especially people that have to move from the mainland to the island, it was like, well, you signal that people were on the street, and it was safe for you to leave the house. So oftentimes people often target that and they use that. But also there's also that religious element as well. So I try to weave sort of like, you know, the fact that people say, oh, you know, these Muslims, you're always blaring, making so much noise in the morning with their call to prayer and things like that. And you have the Christians also waking up and preaching, and you have a lot of that happening.
The loud prayer,
and then, you know, loud prayers, you know, going about and preaching in the mornings and things. So, but then you don't find a lot of people thinking about. So there's also that element of, you know, the tolerance and intolerance and all of this, many things happening in the city. So I try to weave that element of religion, into.
Yeah.
And at the end of it,
yeah.
And at the end of it as well, I don't know if you noticed that, when the experience ends, you have to God be the glory. And I'm not sure if a lot of people got that, but that was actually, it was paying some sort of homage, to Nollywood, on all those Nollywood movies. At the end of it, you'd always have to God be the glory. And then
That's
we just
beautiful.
decided to just incorporate that, at the end of it as well, to also put that in a way, paying homage to Nollywood and yeah.
Yeah, I love that, because one of that in your narrative, because like I say, I am featuring you as an artist, creative, so you are the focus, and it's a narrative of, like you've just correctly explained, how you've played around with this concept of time, space, and cultural consumption, art consumption. There's just that links across most of the things that you've been connected to, and that's why I reached out to you.
Exactly.
So it's it's looking at what you've done as a catalyst, incubating a space. It's looking at what you've done in the context of revitalizing, breathing creative energy into dead space. It's looking at what you've done with virtual reality, with technology, in the future of Lagos. But what you've done with Lagos is, in Lagos at large, is this, what I'm writing about is this 360 view that has been enabled through VR, but it's also a holistic perspective of the consciousness of the space of Lagos.
Yeah.
So with this call to prayer, you are really highlighting and emphasizing the religious consciousness that is within the Lagos space, from
exactly.
To what we are
exactly.
assuming through, as you're ending it, through Nollywood, in terms of the media space, because a lot of Nollywood is shot in Lagos, and it's the is a Lagos type space,
Exactly. And also because it's driven, Nollywood also tends to also engage a lot of our religiosity as well. And there's always that sort of tension between the traditional religious practices and also sort of like, Christianity and things like that. And there's always that constant engagement by Nollywood. So I also wanted to, in a way, it's very subtle. I didn't want to delve into it too much, but I just wanted to actually touch on that, very briefly as well.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's really great, because you have to be, I feel, especially someone who's outside looking in, you have to be brave, I think, as a creative in Africa, in Nigeria, to go full blown, into anything religious. I think the way you've done it is really, really intellectual, and it's as you say, subtle, but it's not provocative in any way. A lot of people wouldn't they wouldn't even understand the concept, to a lot of people it's just sound and words.
Exactly.
But in context, you get it, so that's brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's the essence of a creative. That's the essence of an artist, being able to communicate a language. It's almost like a code, exactly. You encode the language so that there is an audience that investigates it, interrogates it, and then you can say, okay, well, yes, I actually was watching on this, but it's not narrative that attacks,
Yeah, exactly. I don't want it to be like, on first look, because many people have seen it over and over again, and then it just hits them. Then they send me a message and they go, "Oh, okay, I just saw what you just did there," and I'm like, "Oh, okay," but it took them maybe a couple of viewings to actually get to it. So I like that. I like that idea that even if you don't want to go deeper into it, you just want to enjoy it in terms of an experience, you can actually just enjoy it. But then if you really want to go, so that's why I try to layer it as much as possible. So then if you really want to go deeper into it, there's so many things that, you can engage. And one of the things for me, when I was obviously transitioning into extended reality was the fact that I didn't want to fall into this trap, of creating sort of like this, this sort of Afro. There's a whole lot of Afrofuture on where people create sort of like this, almost like sci-fi.
Yes.
And try to sort of. But I felt that we are quite immersive. When you look at the way that we live in like this very immersive.
Yeah.
Surrounded by so much happenings, but then also, the quality of the happenings as well, it's also very layered. So I felt that creating this sort of, computer generated sort of reality, I could also, I kind of engage my reality and look for ways to actually tell sort of like deeper stories, with that sort of engagement. And that's what I try to do, because I feel that, and it's also very important that we document the now for the future.
Yes.
Just even to me last week. So we were trying to get, that it's so difficult to get footage now that you don't have people wearing masks. That period of people not wearing masks is gone. Like, it's like, so it's almost like it's impossible to have a footage, especially if you want to tell, some story, that you want to date and you don't want it to be like very contemporary. So it's very difficult to tell that now. So if you don't have any footage that has been documented and archived, it's just very difficult. You're going to have people dealing with a lot of in post-production as well. So I think for me, it was very important to just I thought Lagos at large between 2018 and 2019. And it was just that period. There's so much that has happened since then, even within the spaces that I shot. Oshodi now has this ultra modern sort of, now, they've moved, local bosses away, there's a tension between and the government as to how to engage the space. Push the Molue drivers, further out, so there's so much happening. Yeah.
Lots of change.
It's just, a lot has changed, and it's just, and I'm just very happy that I was able to capture that period, what's happening then at the time, because, 10 years now, people can have things to refer to and say, okay, what was the world like pre-COVID, for example? What was pre-COVID Lagos like? And people can get a sense of it, and then anything you do onwards now is going to also be also very relevant as well. So I think, it's also very interesting to take the technology from that perspective and to begin to think about utilizing it to document the now for the future. I think it's very, very important so that people 10, 20, 30, even 100 years from now would have a reference point, because that's the challenge we're having as Africans. There's always that tension of, of the fact that we have a lot of things documented. And therefore, a lot of people don't have reference points, because we're a very oral society, everything is kind of oral based. So you find out that because it's not documented, doesn't mean that it didn't exist. And you find sort of like this tension. So I feel that, using extended reality would be a great way for us to catch up with the rest of the world. If we can begin to sort of document our stories in that format, it's going to be it will be easier to access for a lot more people. And then I think the upcoming generation would be able to relate with it because it's done with the technology that is relatable. So.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Relatable technology. So in Lagos at large, you mentioned Oshodi. So what in terms of place, how did your journey, what was the journey like? Was it a starting point from Oshodi to, of course you started from the mainland to the island. So in terms of place, what places did you sort of navigate through that would be recognizable for someone who is following it?
So the experience in itself starts from Ojuelegba. And for me, I consider Ojuelegba is like the median. It's like the middle point, really. It's almost like that middle point between the island and the mainland. But also what it means, because Ojuelegba means of many inroads. And I also wanted to reflect the fact that Lagos, your experience in Lagos comes with many inroads as well. I mean, you have different sort of things happening.
It means of many inroads.
Many inroads, yeah. So you have so many inroads, that lead you to this sort of space.
Right.
And I loved, so that's why I started from Ojuelegba. Now, initially I wanted to have I actually created two versions of Lagos at Large. There was a non-linear version and there was a linear version. But we had to drop, the non-linear version at some point. It was we had some challenges in terms of, although we premiered that at the ITFA as well, but we then forward, we wanted it to be the linear version. But in the non-linear version, you tend to choose your experience. So once you start in Ojuelegba, you decide whether you want to go to Oshodi first or you want to go to the island. But then you end up at Tinubu Square. So the main areas in focus will be, if you started, so you have Ojuelegba Oshodi for the mainland experience. And then the island experience, you had terra culture. You had the beach, which we actually shot at Adro Cafe, just the back of Adro Cafe. And then you had Tinubu Square, where everything kind of, that's like sort of like the high point, of the experience, and everything kind of ends there. But it's also but that space is also quite symbolic as well, because during the colonial times, it used to be the heart of Lagos. It was kind of like the center point of Lagos. I wanted to kind of end the story at almost like the beginning, in a sense, when you look at the history. So it used to be the heart of Lagos. So it's kind of like I'm ending it at the beginning. And it's also, within the non-linear experience, you'd have been able to click on the statue of Madame Tinubu, sort of story about her, a story, who she was. How she started off a slave trader and ended up being, an actor, and fought, became an abolitionist and fought, even the British. And she was at some point deported from Lagos, because of her activities, to abolish slave trade. So it's also very interesting that, in a way she was there, in the background. Then also you had the Kokoro as well, which was this blind minstrel who had come to Lagos and who used to go around the streets, entertaining. Even though he was blind, he knew how to navigate, the streets, and he would sing and he would entertain people. A prince, I think his real name is Aderomu. Is actually a prince from Ondo.
Is this in the actual Lagos of at Large?
Yeah, so you see a statue of somebody singing and a lady dancing.
That's it.
When you get to, that's actually the statue of Kokoro, who was the blind minstrel. Yeah, you could do. I mean, I can send you some more information about him. But
please.
He was an entertainer. He used to entertain people, and he would, even though he was blind, he would navigate his way through Lagos Island, singing on the streets, and children following him, and dancing and things like that. So it was also very interesting in a way to pay homage to him as well, as one of sort of like the icons of the city of Lagos. I think also it was very important to me that, because there's this whole idea that, I think in a way, Fela has been canonized as kind of like the symbol of music out of Lagos. And I felt that there's so many people that Fela, whether it's directly or indirectly as well, or influence the music scene. Like Kokoro, for example, I think he played for Victor Olaiya, who invariably influenced Fela. So you have all of this many, sort of stories that, they interconnect in a very interesting way. So, but because, they're not always in focus, it's always nice to also kind of dig up untold story in that sense as well, and maybe make people more curious about it. So in the non-linear version of Lagos Alive, you'd have been able to click on the statue. Yeah. So you'd have been able to click on the statue of Kokoro, and you'd have gotten more information about him, how he lived, and things like that. Yeah, and then sort of like the experience and takes you. So so yeah, so it was supposed to be an interactive experience to choose your start, and then but everything in the same.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. So this is what you describe as it being layered, and this
Yes.
really intriguing to get, because I watched it with my son, so I mean I'm going to watch it again, but I watched it with my son. So intrigued by it. He thought, oh, this amazing thing that I've seen. He found it really, really interesting and was blown away by the technology, I'm blown away by the narrative, the way you did it, the way you were part of it as well, because I was showing him
that. Exactly.
Yeah, so it was really, really interesting. There were so many different things that I was picking up, and I thought I'm just wait, and when I talk to you, we'll go through it. And of course, there's the narrative itself in terms of the poetry. I know you've talked a little bit about that. I think on IG as well. So it was done by a poet. Was a collaboration.
Yes. So it was done by Njideka Iro. She's a Nigerian Austrian poet. And we had met. It was such a, I don't know. Sometimes they say the universe conspires. So when she came, she was at that moment she was kind of like trying to move to Lagos. She had fallen in love, with Edith, a partner who they had met, while they were schooling in London, and then she was thinking, okay, home. So she had come to involve in our incubator because we used to have this fortnightly poetry event, Outspoken, and they had both come to one of those Outspoken sessions. So she really loved coming to Outspoken whenever she would come to Nigeria. And we just met very casually, but nothing happened then. So I was invited to Vienna, to do a keynote. And then she was asked to moderate, I was supposed to do a keynote and then also a panel discussion, and she was asked to moderate the panel discussion. And then we just got talking, so it's kind of like, okay, so, and then I told her, so what are you working on? What are you working on? And then she told me, oh, she had been trying to move to Lagos. She's really inspired by the city. And, just listening to her talk about the city was just really, in a way, there was that element of excitement. At a level, it was almost like it was almost like she was so nostalgic because she grew up partly in Lagos as well. So there was that element to reconnect to that part of her history, and and I just felt, this actually sounds like the kind of narration that I would want for Lagos at large, because it just sounded right and whatever. And then she had showed me, so she had written a piece called "Peeling is Healing," and it was sort of like, so that was the start of Lagos at large, by the way. So. But we adapted it for Lagos at large. So we're taking elements of Peeling is Healing. And then she wrote another piece.
What's it called? Feeling the Feeling?
Healing is Healing.
Healing is Healing, right.
Peeling is Healing, yeah. So she had written that. I can share some of the text with you.
Peeling is healing. Okay. Because the combination with her poetry and what you did coming together, that was just absolutely beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, so we just had a lot of conversation, and I just said, okay, this is what I'm working on. Would you like to be part of it? And she was instantly, drawn to it, and she was very much interested. So then, we spoke a lot. I mean, we took, obviously, we shared a lot of ideas about the possibilities, about what island blindness at the top was meant to be like. And also because of our experience as well, I mean, she's mixed race, so our experiences on the mainland and on the island are also unique in a sense as well, so I wanted that to also reflect, in the narration, in how she's engaging, in how people are engaging her, in how she also in a way becomes that object that people are always constantly looking at. What is she doing there? How she's inserting herself into different spaces. So we wanted all of that to come together, through the words, and I think everything kind of came together beautifully, so she became sort of like the spirit of it. And I didn't want it to be, I wanted the experience to kind of be, I didn't want it to be like some sort of sad, when you're looking at the city and I wanted it to be like people are just, there's that everydayness and people are just really having a good time, within the different circumstances and hoping for the next phase of the adventure, so to speak, So you see the bus driver in the morning, he wakes up, excited about life, he's living life. We incorporated the motor driver in, him just having a casual drink, because it's hot, and that just humanizes him. It's not, when you see conductors, they often tend to look at them as miscreants, but this is just a guy who has left his house in the morning. Sometimes he needs to have a drink to cool himself, just like any other person. And he's just having a day, he's having a chat with his boss in the middle of the experience. And we just wanted to humanize it in a way that this is what people are just having a day to day. So it's not something, to look at and think that there's something to objectify or just look at it and say, something great. No, it's not something grand. People take buses every day. People take molars every day. People go to work every day.
It was beautiful. It was a very authentic, very original portrayal of Lagos, and done in such a creative way. Like my son's been in Lagos just one time, 2017, for the first time, and he just kept saying, because that Hard Rock Cafe with the beach at the back, he went and he had a look around. So he was like, oh my goodness, mommy, she captured it so beautifully, And, yeah, you did an amazing job. So I was like,
thank you very much.
Yes. Last time you mentioned this to me, I didn't know anything about it, So since then, of course, when it was featured at the festival and then you put up some more information about it on Instagram, I thought, oh gosh, I definitely need to talk about this, because this is exactly what needs to be documented. This is exactly what people need to understand about, in Africa, and portraying Africa. There are different angles, there are different narratives, and there are ways that you can do it, to show a really authentic, very clean perspective,
exactly.
But you brought it out in a very clean way. Like you say, it's a conductor, as a bus driver, it was very clean perspective. That's real. That is real life. That's people's everyday, their own reality of their day.
Reality, yes.
So
and there's something, and I didn't want to bring any projections onto it. I didn't want to make it look like, because people are riding more lawyers is bad, or because it's the underbelly of the city, therefore you have to look at it in a certain prism.
Exactly.
It was just to normalize. It was very important to normalize it, because oftentimes you have all of this exaggerated stories told, and people are often. I had a conversation with someone, I think that was in 2014, and I was taking a group around, and we're going to Makoko. And, the guy was, at first, it was so like, it was taken aback, here was somebody coming, he was Eritrean, but then he was living in the US. And then I think for him, that was like a first experience, so he came in and he was so like, this is so bad, this and this. So I wouldn't take photographs, it's exploiting the people and things like that. So I said, but would you have the same notion if you had gone to Venice? Because Venice is the same thing, it's the same concept, people on water, the same, people just living on water. Would you, these are people that have been there since like, I think mid 18th century, and this is their normal. This is a lot of them,
that's their norm, Jumoke, just broke for a minute there. I don't know if you're back. It's just freezing a bit. I don't know if you're back now.
Yeah, sorry, I lost you there. And then I told him also, I asked him also, would you have had the same hang up, in Venice? it was now taking it back. I'll say, this is your projection. You're projecting your reality onto these people. I think to understand them, you need to sit back and say, how are people surviving and they made their life? There's something very organic and there's something very interesting about the way that they've adapted
exactly
into this environment. I think that's actually something to look at. It's not something to criticize. It's not something to condemn. It's something to understand that how have they lived in this over a century? They've kept on these practices. They're loggers.
exactly connected to the trade as well.
The trade.
Yeah.
They're predominantly loggers. They go all the way to Ilaje, and all of that, and they bring log into the city, and then they make fish. They actually provide, sustenance, to the ecosystem. So you need to look at it from that perspective. Without them, there's certain elements, things that wouldn't be easy, in terms of, because the whole of the logging trade actually takes place, on there, and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's also very interesting that when people come into this environment, there's always that tendency to project, without actually understand, So people often come and they don't try to understand why are people living the way they do,
Yeah.
What is it about that living that maybe they know something that we don't even know? Maybe we need to learn from them and not the other way around, because they
exactly
very happy lives, and they're very content.
Very content and very proud of what they do.
Proud of
like
what
you
they
say,
do. Yeah.
It's like when it's like going to the mall or going to the market. A lot of people go to the market, think, oh gosh, it's smelly or it's chaotic.
Yeah.
But that's a very rich ecosystem. It's being in a typical African marketplace is one of the most sensory experiences that anyone could ever have. And if you don't project, like you're saying, and you don't go there with any judgment, you go for experience, you can see the richness and you can see the efficiency. You can see the effectiveness of the system as it works, day to day. And it's beautiful, the network.
It's so beautiful.
And all of that, yeah.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, yeah. So
that's amazing.
So I think for me, I had all of that. Obviously, many people have spoken, you have people like John Berger, for example, who wrote the book on ways of seeing. And it also made, it sharpens, the way that I perceive things as well. How do I perceive things? How do I perceive myself within the context of what I'm perceiving? How much of what I'm perceiving is as a reflection of my own, sort of reality and my own projections. So it's always very important to kind of differentiate what I'm seeing and to be very clear in my seeing, so that I'm not projecting my own reality onto that. I mean, obviously, you have to have in terms of then there comes the question of how, as an artist, do I insert myself into the piece? And I found ways of doing that. The intro was one of the ways that I inserted myself into the piece. The intro was like a sort of like a collage of images. There were a mix of things. I had images from my personal album, from my family album, for example. So you have images of my dad and my mom, my grandfather, my uncle. But I also had some archival material as well, which also showed the state of, colonial images as well, images taken during colonial times. But I had a mix, and then also images that I took, because I've been documenting Lagos extensively since 2010. I had images of different areas of Lagos that I personally have documented, and you will see that as kind of like an introduction. And I wanted to kind of also, in a way, use that introductory space to reflect on the many stories that have been told about Lagos, whether it's personal, whether it's collective, whether it's, from the archives and things like that, to recognize that as my starting point, and then to kind of then evolve the story beyond that.
Yeah, I'm just getting those words down. Beautiful. So well put. Jumoke, beautiful. Thank you so much.
like I say, you know, I'm going to stay in touch. Yeah, I'm going to stay in touch with you because, you know, I love your creative energy, you know, really fascinated by the projects that you've been engaged with. I already told you the Ocean Grove thing that you were part of. You know, this write-up, it's about 6,000 words, you know. It's
wow. Okay, maybe I stopped my video again. Olalekan, I lost you a little bit. Can you hear me? Olalekan, can you hear me? Hello?
there. Okay, sorry.
In and out, but at least we got what we wanted.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much. Thank you.